Welcome, the anointed ones. There's nothing louder than a whole town pretending nothing happened. What you're witnessing right now isn't victory, applause, or even closure. It's something far more uncomfortable. It's collective embarrassment. It's the awkward silence that follows a badly told lie when everyone suddenly remembers the truth at the same time. And unlike personal shame, this kind doesn't live in one person. It spreads through streets, workplaces, churches, family gatherings, and group chats, like an uninvited guest that refuses to leave. Here's a fact people don't like to admit. Communities don't collapse because of one scandal. They collapse because of patterns they defended for too long. Sociologists have documented that when a group normalizes the mistreatment of one individual, the damage doesn't stay contained. It rewires how people trust each other, how authority operates, and how truth gets handled. Eventually, the group pays for what it protected. Quietly at first, then all at once. That's why the energy feels strange now. People are overly polite. Stories don't line up anymore. Laughter arrives a second too late. You'll notice conversations abruptly change topics, names get avoided, and certain memories are suddenly misremembered. Not because anyone is confused, but because everyone knows exactly what they're trying not to say. This isn't regret. Regret would require ownership. This is embarrassment seasoned with denial and served family style. And here's the slightly funny part, the part no one planned for. The town didn't get exposed by drama, revenge, or confrontation. It got exposed by normal life continuing without their permission. You didn't crash. You didn't spiral. You didn't disappear into the cautionary tale they prepared. You simply existed. And somehow, that turned into the most inconvenient outcome possible. Imagine putting all that effort into a narrative, only for reality to casually ruin it without even raising its voice. This isn't about redemption arcs or public apologies. It's about what happens when a group realizes it can't outrun its own behavior. The shame you're seeing isn't loud or dramatic. It's structural. It's in how people move now. It's in what can no longer be said comfortably. And once that kind of embarrassment settles in, it doesn't fade. It rearranges everything. Stay with me, because what's unfolding here says far more about power, complicity, and human behavior than most people are ready to admit. Number 1. The town isn't embarrassed because you left. It's embarrassed because you survived intact. The truth is harsh and unavoidable. What shakes people to their core isn't your absence or your departure. It's that you made it through without breaking. You walked out of their traps, their manipulations, and their whispered judgments without losing yourself. Every town, every small group, every clique thrives on the illusion that they can control, diminish, or define someone else. They act as though a person's worth depends on their ability to comply, to stumble, or to validate the fears and insecurities of those around them. And when that illusion collapses, the discomfort isn't subtle, it's visceral. They realize they've been betting against the wrong person, and the outcome embarrasses them more than any public confrontation ever could. Survival, in its purest form, is a mirror held up to everyone who tried to shape you into a cautionary tale. You didn't give them the satisfaction of witnessing your struggle. You didn't hand over the validation of their judgment. Every attempt they made to break you failed. And now, the evidence of your intact, unshakable presence stands as a silent indictment of their behavior. They wanted proof that you were vulnerable, that you would falter, that their whispers and gossip had power. Instead, they see you moving through life with clarity, strength, and an inner calm they can't manufacture. The irony is exquisite. Their pride, their assumptions, their petty power plays, all of it was invested in a story that never came true. And now, even casual observers can see it. The very person they thought they could control is thriving despite them. This embarrassment is sharp, almost humiliating, because it's not temporary. It lingers in every glance, every passing comment, every subtle shift in conversation. People are forced to confront what they underestimated, and it burns quietly but persistently. Survival doesn't just preserve you, it exposes them. It shows that cruelty, judgment, and manipulation are impotent against someone who refuses to play by their rules. And that realization, seeping into every corner of their awareness, is a kind of humiliation they can't shake. You didn't need to fight a war to win. Simply existing intact was enough to undo their narrative and leave them exposed in ways no confrontation ever could. Number 2. Their shame comes from realizing the problem was never you. It was their agreement with cruelty. The deepest, most uncomfortable truth for anyone who participated in or condoned wrongdoing is that the fault rarely lies with the person they harmed. The person who survives, who stays grounded and uncorrupted, shines a glaring light on the real issue, the collective choice to accept cruelty as normal. People don't just wake up one day and decide to be unkind or malicious. There is always a network of agreement, silent nods, quiet approvals, and unspoken permissions that allow behavior to continue unchecked. That agreement is the real problem, and when the victim thrives, it exposes how deeply flawed the system around them was. This is why the embarrassment runs so deep. It's not just one person feeling guilt, it's an entire town, a circle, a group of individuals who now have to confront the fact that they actively or passively supported something they now find reprehensible. Their shame is compounded by the realization that it wasn't your actions, your choices, or your character that created the discomfort. It was their willingness to go along with something cruel. Every whispered insult, every veiled manipulation, every act of sabotage that they tried to rationalize now stands as undeniable evidence of their moral failure. There is no quick way to undo this kind of exposure. They can't erase the fact that they were participants, even passively, in a system that mistreated someone capable of rising above it. And watching you continue, unbent by their cruelty, amplifies that shame. It's a mirror they never wanted to see, but one they can't look away from. It's a slow, gnawing realization that the world didn't break you because of who you are. It broke them because they failed to recognize humanity in the first place. Your existence, your resilience, and your integrity become a silent indictment. The embarrassment isn't public outburst or dramatic confrontation. It's in the way they shift uncomfortably in conversation, the way explanations fumble, and the quiet recognition that they were wrong all along. The problem was never you. The problem was their agreement with cruelty, and now there's no hiding from it. Number 3. They're embarrassed because the story they rehearsed no longer matches the evidence. People spend years constructing narratives about others. They tell themselves stories that justify cruelty, dismiss integrity, and rationalize indifference. They rehearse these stories endlessly in their minds, repeating lines, crafting excuses, and imagining scenarios where their version of reality holds sway. They whisper it to friends, nod in agreement with allies, and even convince themselves that it is the truth. But all of that careful preparation, every justification and rehearsal, collapses the moment reality refuses to play along. And when it collapses, the embarrassment is instantaneous, sharp, and impossible to hide. The town, or group, that once felt confident in its moral superiority now looks like it has been caught mid-act of self-deception. Every claim they made about you, that you were weak, unworthy, or incapable of success, has been contradicted by simple facts: your survival, your calm, your undeniable competence. The rehearsed story that kept them comfortable no longer matches what people can observe with their own eyes. Their assumptions, which they repeated in hushed tones and in public whispers alike, have been exposed as lies, half-truths, or wishful thinking. The discomfort of being caught off guard is nothing compared to the internal chaos of realizing that for years they convinced themselves of something that was never true. And the embarrassment doesn't stay hidden. It leaks out in small, unmistakable ways. Conversations get shorter. Compliments come reluctantly. Eyes flick away instead of meeting yours. The pride they carried while rehearsing their narrative is replaced with a quiet, gnawing self-awareness. They thought they controlled the story, but the story has always been controlled by reality, by the evidence of your life, by the truth of who you are. Watching them squirm under the weight of their own contradictions is not revenge. It's inevitability. The moment they invested so heavily in a narrative that reality refused to honor, the universe started to rewrite the script without consulting them. And the embarrassment they feel now isn't just a fleeting discomfort. It's the lingering recognition that for years they were performing a play, and the audience always knew the truth. Number 4. The town isn't united in shame. It's fragmented by guilt. When a community collectively participates in wrongdoing, it often assumes a false sense of unity. They believe that because everyone is involved, the responsibility is diluted, invisible, or acceptable. But the truth is far messier. Shame doesn't spread evenly, and guilt never sleeps. What looks like a single embarrassed entity is really a fractured network of individuals, each carrying their own weight of conscience, each aware of how far they strayed from integrity, and each struggling to decide how much can be admitted without collapsing entirely. Some people knew it was wrong from the beginning. They told themselves to look the other way, convinced themselves that silence was survival. Others enjoyed the spectacle or the power it gave them, feeling justified by the complicity of the group. Then there are those who didn't understand fully, but instinctively felt something was off. And now, months or years later, that vague discomfort has crystallized into raw guilt. This fragmentation makes the shame almost unbearable because it doesn't stay neat or contained. Conversations stumble. Alliances shift. Friends glance at each other warily, unsure who shares what conscience and who will snap under exposure. Guilt fractures trust faster than any argument ever could. The people who once nodded along with cruelty now wrestle privately with whether they were actors, accomplices, or observers. The embarrassment, you see, isn't uniform. It's chaotic, uneven, and unpredictable. Each individual measures their personal exposure differently, which turns the town's supposed solidarity into internal discord. Their previous confidence is gone, replaced by whispered defenses and awkward hesitations. Even a casual interaction becomes a test of morality, a negotiation with conscience that they cannot escape. Meanwhile, you exist outside that collapse, unshaken. Your calm presence makes the cracks visible, the tensions audible, and the moral failures undeniable. The fragmentation is not a spectacle. It is a quiet, relentless unraveling, happening beneath the surface in every glance, every half-finished sentence, every careful shift in tone. The town isn't just embarrassed. It's divided, and that division is the natural consequence of people realizing that they can't all be innocent while their collective behavior screams otherwise. Number 5. They're ashamed because they needed you to fail to feel morally comfortable. People often build their sense of right and wrong on the assumption that others will falter. They measure morality not by action or principle, but by comparing themselves to someone they expect to stumble. In their minds, your failure would have justified their cruelty, reassured them that their behavior wasn't extreme, and allowed them to sleep at night with the comforting thought that they were better simply because you were weaker. That's why your survival and resilience hit like a hammer to their carefully constructed moral framework. They needed you to fail, and when you didn't, the world shifted beneath their feet. For years, they may have whispered about your shortcomings, spread rumors, or subtly tried to manipulate situations to expose you. Every slight, every attempt to undermine you was not just an act of malice. It was a psychological safety net for them. They could only feel secure in their actions if the person at the receiving end faltered. Your existence, calm and intact, destroyed that net. Suddenly, the standard by which they measured themselves no longer applied. Their moral superiority, once assumed, became absurd, flimsy, and impossible to maintain. And it's not just a private realization. The embarrassment manifests in public and in private. Conversations around you become tense. Compliments feel forced. Defenses slip, and excuses start to sound hollow even to themselves. Every interaction becomes a reminder that the validation they counted on, your failure, didn't arrive. They have to confront something far deeper than disappointment, the recognition that their ethical confidence was built on someone else's presumed weakness, not their own integrity. Your success, your steadiness, your refusal to be broken forces them to face the unvarnished truth. They were counting on something you never gave. They are exposed, not because you fought them directly, but because you refused to play the role they assigned. That exposure is a slow, gnawing embarrassment, the kind that lingers in hallways, conversations, and glances, quietly reminding them that their sense of moral comfort was never earned. It was borrowed, and now it's gone. Number 6. The embarrassment comes from being seen by outsiders through your eyes. One of the cruelest realities for people who mistreat others is that their actions are never as invisible as they think. Inside the bubble of a town or community, cruelty can feel secret, justified, and even clever. But the moment the perspective of the person who endured it is recognized by outsiders, the illusion collapses. Your survival, your calm, and your dignity act as a lens, showing the world exactly what happened. It isn't just that people outside see them, it's that outsiders see them exactly as you did. Small, petty, and complicit in behavior that now looks absurd when exposed. When someone tries to harm or belittle you, they rarely consider that their actions reflect more on them than on you. They assume their narrative, their gossip, or their judgment will hold. Then the impossible happens. The world sees through the story you've silently carried. The embarrassment isn't loud or explosive. It's in the recognition that their behavior, once normalized and hidden, is now visible in its entirety, stripped of excuses. They wanted to control perception, but perception is no longer theirs to shape. And this exposure is precise and inescapable. Outsiders judge not just the acts themselves, but the character behind them, the whispers, the passive acceptance, the orchestrated manipulations. All of it suddenly becomes transparent. They realize that the world doesn't see a few isolated incidents. It sees a pattern, a culture, a moral failure baked into everyday interactions. What once seemed clever now looks ridiculous. What once felt safe now feels suffocating. Meanwhile, your presence magnifies it. You didn't need to explain, justify, or accuse. You just existed, intact, carrying the truth of your experience with poise. That truth is heavier than any accusation because it cannot be denied. It refracts the embarrassment back onto them in every glance, every passing conversation, every interaction where outsiders quietly acknowledge the discrepancy between their supposed power and your unshakable reality. The town's humiliation becomes layered, multidimensional, and impossible to escape. And the sharper edge of it is that it comes from seeing themselves reflected through your unwavering, undeniable eyes. Number 7. They're humiliated because power was wasted on someone who never became small. People who try to dominate, manipulate, or control others believe power is a guarantee of results. They think if they apply enough pressure, whisper enough lies, or isolate someone long enough, the target will eventually shrink, break, or bow to their expectations. They measure their worth by the perceived success of these efforts. What they never anticipate is the rare, infuriating reality: someone who refuses to become small, someone who doesn't bend, crumble, or diminish under their weight. And that refusal turns all their exertion into a public display of futility. The humiliation comes from the sheer wasted energy. Years of manipulation, coordination, and covert sabotage are rendered meaningless by the simple fact that you stayed whole. Every insult, every orchestrated slight, every attempt to erase or diminish you was an investment they expected to yield a broken version of yourself. Instead, the return on their effort is zero, or worse, it highlights their impotence. Their power, which once seemed unstoppable in the confined world of gossip and social pressure, now looks laughable, almost pathetic, because it failed to achieve the only goal that mattered: your reduction. And humiliation has a way of festering quietly. It doesn't need to be announced. It sneaks into conversations, undercut by tone and hesitation. It lingers in glances that dart too quickly away. It's in the awkward phrasing of every story they attempt to tell, knowing that the audience, and more importantly you, can see the failure in full color. What makes it sharper still is that your survival didn't require retaliation or spectacle. You didn't have to fight theatrically. You didn't need to prove yourself in dramatic ways. Simply maintaining your integrity, your presence, and your dignity while their power proved ineffective is enough to humiliate them deeply. Their influence, once wielded with confidence, is now revealed as empty. The weight they tried to place on you didn't crush you. It exposed them. Their humiliation is rooted not in confrontation but in failure, the unmistakable, undeniable evidence that power is useless against someone who refuses to be small. Number 8. Their shame deepened when they realized you never needed their approval to grow. One of the most uncomfortable truths for people who try to control or belittle you is that their opinions, judgments, and manipulations were never required for your progress. They assumed that their influence, whether through social pressure, gossip, or outright intimidation, was a prerequisite for your validation, growth, or success. They believed they had power over your path, that their approval or acceptance was somehow tied to your ability to thrive. Watching you move forward, completely untethered from their judgment, is a type of embarrassment they never anticipated. Their shame isn't about being ignored, it's about realizing they were irrelevant all along. Every attempt to manipulate outcomes, to guide, restrict, or diminish you, now looks not just futile, but absurd. They invested energy, time, and moral reasoning into controlling a life that refused to depend on them. The very framework they built to validate themselves, "I am important because I shape others," collapses when the person they targeted proves they never needed that shaping. It's a quiet, insidious humiliation because it cuts to the core of their self-perception, and it's compounded by visibility. Others see it too. Witnesses notice the calm confidence, the forward momentum, the ability to grow unbothered by the small storms they stirred. What was once an invisible struggle becomes evidence of independence, and that evidence speaks volumes. The very people who tried to dictate your reality are forced to watch as you thrive, proving that their influence was never essential. This kind of shame is deeper than public humiliation. It's structural. It seeps into conversations, relationships, and memories. Every time they reflect on the past, they remember the effort wasted on someone who never sought permission to exist, who never needed approval to evolve, and who moved forward while their judgments faded into irrelevance. Their discomfort is subtle, persistent, and unavoidable. You didn't confront them directly. You simply grew, and in doing so, revealed their impotence and irrelevance with a clarity they cannot escape. Number 9. The town is dying of embarrassment because the truth didn't need your cooperation to surface. What's most infuriating for people who tried to control or undermine you is that the truth has a way of appearing whether or not you actively reveal it. You didn't have to speak out, confront them, or expose their behavior. You didn't need to fight for recognition, validate your experiences, or dramatize the injustice. The reality of who you are, how you endured, and the way they acted came to light on its own. Every lie they told, every manipulation they carried out, every attempt to twist the story for their comfort is now laid bare without you lifting a finger. That is the ultimate sting. The embarrassment that floods a town in this situation is subtle but unrelenting. People notice the contradictions between what they claimed about you and what everyone can now observe. Actions and behaviors they tried to disguise, minimize, or justify suddenly become clear. There's no single moment of exposure, no need for confrontation, no speech or evidence you had to provide. Their own patterns, their own decisions, created a mirror that reflects their failures more honestly than you ever could. And the worst part for them is that there's no one to blame but themselves. It's a kind of humiliation that seeps into every corner of community life. In conversations, people hesitate. In gatherings, glances linger a fraction too long. Attempts to maintain authority or credibility feel hollow because the truth is already moving through the social fabric, invisible but undeniable. They realize they cannot control perception anymore. Even the smallest attempt to rewrite the narrative now looks desperate, transparent, and ineffective. Your mere existence, your consistency, and your integrity act as a silent force, letting reality speak for itself. You didn't have to fight. You didn't have to prove anything. The truth didn't need your cooperation to surface, and in doing so, it exposed every flaw, every moral failure, every miscalculation they thought would remain hidden. That is why the town is embarrassed. That is why they squirm. The spotlight was never on you, yet it illuminated them fully, leaving their pretenses naked, their pride shattered, and their discomfort permanent. Number 10. They're ashamed because younger people are asking questions they can't answer cleanly. Nothing exposes the fragility of a community's moral facade like curiosity from the next generation. Young people notice inconsistencies, detect unfairness, and aren't yet conditioned to accept excuses the way adults often do. When they start asking straightforward questions about why certain behaviors were tolerated, why some people were treated poorly, or why cruelty was normalized, the very people who relied on secrecy, justification, and manipulation suddenly find themselves cornered. Their answers falter, their rehearsed stories collapse, and their embarrassment spreads because they can't offer explanations that hold up under simple scrutiny. This is more than awkward. It's destabilizing. For years they counted on ignorance, distraction, and conformity to protect their reputations. They relied on people not paying attention, turning a blind eye, or accepting narratives without questioning them. Young voices disrupt that delicate balance. Questions that seem innocent. Why was that allowed? Or, why did nobody stop it? Cut straight to the heart of what they had hoped would remain hidden. There is no clever phrasing, no passive-aggressive shift, no rehearsed justification that can fully cover the cracks. Their embarrassment intensifies because they now face the stark realization that their moral authority has no foundation. It's also psychologically punishing. The very people who orchestrated, encouraged, or silently condoned harm are forced to confront the awareness of their mistakes not in private but in real time, in front of witnesses who don't yet accept their lies. Every hesitation, every awkward pause, every poorly crafted excuse only magnifies their shame. Meanwhile, you exist outside of this chaos. You've lived the truth, endured what they couldn't acknowledge, and maintained your integrity without begging for validation. Watching the younger generation notice what they tried to hide is almost poetic justice. It's not dramatic or loud, but it's deeply humiliating because it's irreversible. The town's discomfort, their inability to answer simple questions, and the collapse of their narrative are all on display. You didn't have to accuse anyone. You didn't have to expose anyone. Their own actions, combined with the scrutiny of the next generation, are doing that work for you, and it leaves them squirming in embarrassment they can't escape. Number 11. Their discomfort comes from realizing cruelty ages badly. Time has a way of stripping away the gloss of justification, and that's where the real embarrassment begins. What once seemed clever, harmless, or necessary suddenly looks outdated, petty, and outright cruel. People who built their self-image around having power, influence, or moral authority over others now realize that their actions have not withstood the test of time. They see their past behavior as a series of mistakes framed by arrogance, insecurity, or indifference, and they can't hide from it. What once felt like dominance now feels small, and what once felt justified now feels indefensible. The gnawing discomfort comes from more than recognition. It comes from perspective. They watch as the person they targeted moves forward with composure, strength, and clarity, while their own actions linger as evidence of poor judgment. Memories that they once rationalized, laughed about, or excused now replay with painful accuracy. Every story, every act of manipulation, every whisper intended to harm, now looks like a record of their failure to act with integrity. The embarrassment isn't external, it's internal, persistent, and impossible to ignore. And it's worse because cruelty leaves traces. People who were hurt remember clearly. Observers notice patterns that the perpetrators once assumed were invisible. Even the casual onlooker can sense the mismatch between the supposed superiority of the aggressor and the enduring dignity of the person who was harmed. That realization hits hard. The power they thought they wielded has no permanence. It doesn't age well. Meanwhile, the person they tried to diminish has already outpaced them, not with vengeance, but with persistence and grace. Their behavior, once celebrated in their own circles, is now exposed as short-sighted and futile. Time doesn't just reveal truth, it disarms arrogance and exposes the emptiness of cruelty. And as the years add up, what once seemed like control becomes a monument to embarrassment, a record that cruelty, no matter how confident it appears in the moment, never grows more respectable with age. Number 12. They're embarrassed because no apology would fix what was normalized. The deepest kind of shame comes from realizing that the damage they caused wasn't a single mistake or a brief lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, a culture, a way of life that they collectively accepted, encouraged, or ignored. And patterns don't disappear with a single apology. No amount of saying "I'm sorry" or claiming ignorance can erase the reality that cruelty, manipulation, and indifference were normalized for years. The embarrassment they feel isn't performative. It's structural because it's tied to the system they helped sustain. Apologies are meant for moments, for acts that can be reconciled with sincerity. But when harm is woven into everyday interactions, when gossip, exclusion, and subtle sabotage are treated as ordinary, an apology becomes meaningless. It can't undo what was repeated, what was witnessed by others, and what shaped someone else's experience of the world. They can speak, write, or announce their remorse, but the truth doesn't change, and the truth is unforgiving. Your integrity, resilience, and survival stand as evidence that their attempts to normalize wrongdoing were futile, exposing their actions as both morally bankrupt and socially embarrassing. What makes this embarrassment so sharp is the helplessness. They can't fix the past. They can't adjust the narrative fully in their favor. They are trapped in a timeline where every moment of cruelty or complicity is preserved, documented in memory, in the stories people tell, and in the way the community now observes them. The facade of normality they relied on is gone, and no apology can reconstruct it. Meanwhile, you continue without needing their validation, moving past the culture they tried to enforce. Your growth, calm, and clarity highlight their failure in a way that words never could. Their shame lingers in conversations, in glances, in subtle shifts in behavior. The town's embarrassment isn't loud or performative, it's persistent, unavoidable, and growing. What was normalized for convenience or conformity now stands exposed, untouchable and undeniable, leaving them with the stark reality that some patterns, once seen clearly, can never be apologized away. Number 13. The town is unraveling because your existence disproves their moral hierarchy. For years, certain people believed they occupied the top of a moral ladder. They ranked themselves as judges, gatekeepers, and authorities, convinced that their judgment, influence, or social position made them superior. Every criticism, every manipulation, and every subtle act of control reinforced their sense of hierarchy. Then someone like you comes along, someone who moves through life with integrity, calm, and resilience, and suddenly that carefully constructed ladder collapses. Your existence alone disproves the order they relied on, and the discomfort that spreads through the town is immediate, subtle, and unstoppable. This isn't about revenge or confrontation. It's about undeniable evidence. You lived in a way that rendered their supposed superiority meaningless. All the power plays, whispers, and social policing they relied on were premised on the assumption that they defined worth. Watching you navigate life, unshaken and intact, forces them to confront a reality they can't rewrite. Their moral ranking was imaginary. It was based on convenience, fear, and projection, not truth. The unraveling is everywhere, even if quiet. Alliances fray as people reconsider who holds influence and who doesn't. Private conversations are filled with hesitation and awkward pauses because no one wants to admit the hierarchy they relied on is collapsing. The authority they believed they wielded becomes transparent, and the social structures they leaned on are exposed as fragile constructs rather than markers of actual integrity. Meanwhile, your presence amplifies the effect. You didn't need to prove a point or call anyone out. Simply existing, thriving, and refusing to participate in their games dismantled the illusion entirely. Their embarrassment and anxiety aren't momentary, they are structural. Every glance, every passing comment, and every shared memory reminds them that their moral superiority was a myth, and it has been quietly but thoroughly disproven. Your existence alone became a truth they cannot argue against, a quiet revelation that undoes years of control and pretension. The town isn't just embarrassed, it is unraveling from the inside out, forced to reckon with a hierarchy that never existed and a person who refused to validate it. Number 14. Their shame isn't loud, it's structural. The most insidious kind of embarrassment doesn't scream. It doesn't erupt in dramatic confrontations or public displays. It settles quietly, invisibly, into the very framework of everyday life. That's why the town's shame is structural. It's woven into how people move, speak, and interact with one another after years of complicity and cruelty. It manifests in subtle hesitations, awkward phrasing, and the careful avoidance of topics that once seemed trivial, but now carry the weight of exposure. Every conversation is measured, every glance calculated, because the collective conscience has been unsettled in a way that cannot be undone. Structural shame doesn't leave room for excuses. It doesn't vanish with apologies or explanations. It is embedded in memory, in social patterns, and in the unspoken acknowledgement of what was once tolerated. People begin second-guessing themselves, wondering who remembers, who notices, and who might quietly judge them for actions that were once normalized. There's no single moment of reckoning. It's a constant, low-level pressure that reshapes behavior, erodes confidence, and reveals cracks in the systems they relied on to justify cruelty. Meanwhile, your presence becomes the lens through which all of this is measured. You didn't have to confront anyone, prove yourself, or demand recognition. You simply existed with consistency, integrity, and resilience, and that consistency made the town's structural flaws undeniable. Your survival and calmness expose the artificial nature of the power dynamics they depended on, the empty authority they wielded, and the moral compromises they made without thinking. The result is a town that moves differently. People shift uncomfortably in meetings, hesitate in conversations, and carefully choose what they reveal or hide. The embarrassment isn't theatrical. It's in the invisible tension that runs through every interaction. It lingers, persistent and unavoidable, a reminder that cruelty, complicity, and moral failure leave traces that cannot be erased. Your quiet strength has turned their structure itself into a monument of exposure, a permanent reminder that shame doesn't always shout. Sometimes it quietly reshapes everything from the inside out. The story we've explored isn't just about one person surviving difficult circumstances. It's about the undeniable truth that integrity, resilience, and self-worth have a power no scheme, gossip, or manipulation can ever touch. Every point we've discussed exposes a reality most people don't want to face. Communities and individuals who rely on cruelty, control, and false hierarchies ultimately reveal themselves through their own actions. From the humiliation of wasted power to the quiet, structural embarrassment that seeps into every interaction, the shame of those who tried to diminish you is persistent, unavoidable, and deeply rooted. What's remarkable is how simple it all is. You didn't have to fight theatrically. You didn't need to prove yourself with loud confrontations or dramatic displays. Your calm, steady presence and refusal to participate in their games became the ultimate mirror. It reflected back every lie, every manipulation, every assumption they made about control and superiority, every whispered plan, every subtle attempt to undermine you, every expectation that you would falter. All of it failed, and the failure speaks louder than any accusation could. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a story of revelation. It's a reminder that true strength doesn't always roar, but its impact resonates through the lives and communities around it. Those who tried to shame or control you are now confronted with the most uncomfortable truth. Their power was never real. Their superiority was imagined, and their cruelty only exposed the fragility of their own character. The embarrassment they feel, the structural discomfort that lingers in their conversations and behavior, is a testament to your unshakable integrity. So, if this message resonates with you, if you recognize the power of surviving with dignity in the face of those who doubted you, make sure you continue the journey with us. Subscribe to the channel for more insights and revelations that expose the truths many want to hide. Like this video to show your support. Comment below with your thoughts or experiences. Your voice matters. And share it with others who need to see this perspective. Let's keep uncovering the realities that shape our lives, challenge the pretenses that hold people back, and celebrate the strength it takes to remain unshaken in a world that often hopes you will be. God bless you.